welcome to Season 6 of How I Made It Through. As I've said before, it is often through pain and suffering that we learn our most profound lessons. It is through courageously exploring the inner landscape of our lives and seeking healing that we transform. Joining me this season is my newest co-host, Bernadette Thompson. Bernadette and I invite you to join us, now twice a week, as we continue to explore the extraordinary stories of those who've had near-death and spiritually transformative experiences, or are simply wise and old souls sent here to help the collective awaken and heal. Our show reminds us that death of the body does not mean death of the soul, and that indeed we do transition into the wonder of the afterlife and come back again and again and again. Our hope is that each episode will serve as inspiration for your own spiritual discovery. We thank you for joining us in this powerful learning and ask that you subscribe, comment, like, and share. Together, we can spread the growing awareness that we are all infinite souls sent to Earth School at this very unique and miraculous time in human evolution. Welcome to How I Made It Through. Today, I am thrilled to have two spectacular people with me. Of course, my co-host for Season 6, Bernadette Thompson, and our guest today is Stopher Cavins. I'm going to go ahead and read his bio, and then we'll just launch into his story and our conversation. So it's such an honor to have you. Stopher is a Los Angeles-based psychic medium, member of the LGBTQ community, former military, father of two, grandfather of two, husband, dog dad of two English bulldogs. And through his work as an intuitive reader, he is able to help clients better understand and heal from traumatic and difficult situations they've experienced. He also helps them identify energetic pathways forward that will bring them the least resistance. Welcome, Stopher.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Thank you for being here. Well, I discovered you on YouTube and was like, this guy's pretty darn interesting. I love your sort of subdued, very humble style. You always preface everything with, I am the messenger. This is what is coming through. And what's really unique about you is that you talk about not talking to spirit guides, but reading energy.
Yeah.
Your story is a really fascinating one. Can you say a little bit about before you opened up so we have context of what it was like for you to open up?
Yeah, here's a story that's kind of coming to mind because when I tell people that I, speak with spirit and I do all this energy stuff, they assume that I was the kid growing up that would, see ghosts and that type of thing. And I really wasn't, but I remember my grandmother and my mother talking when I was probably 3 or 4 years old, and then telling the story later on that when I was young, about that age, 3 or 4, I would talk about my great grandfather, Ernest, who had passed a few years before I was even born. And when they would talk about him, I would tell them that I knew him and say all these things, very, poignant things about him. They would try to redirect and tell me, no, he passed away before you were born. And I would let them know that I knew him and I knew him in heaven, which would kind of freak them out a little bit. So I don't remember that on a, first person basis, but I do hear this story told quite often. So it lets me know that I was connected when I was young. And then kind of from there, life gets in the way and that type of thing and childhood traumas and all that good stuff, kind of closed down some of that, I believe. So it didn't really come back until probably about 4 years ago, 2020.
Really?
Yeah. And it was kind of an interesting story too. I was actually helping a friend market his spirit mediumship business. And in that process of helping him get his website going, kind of blogging for him, just kind of diving into his world, spirit grabbed me and said, this is your journey too.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And the weird thing, me and him had been friends for 20 years, almost like 18 years at that point. We met in a very serendipitous way back in 2001, 2002. And through this journey, unfortunately, his and my friendship did not endure. But I kind of just know that we were brought together back then so that this could happen now for both of us. And he's doing well, I'm doing well. So that's kind of the journey we were put on.
Okay.
Awesome.
in a nutshell. I mean, there's more to it, but that's kind of in a nutshell what happened.
Of course. You speak a lot about being a gay man in the military, the Navy, and that was a very, very important chapter in your life. Would you mind sharing a bit about why that was so and what that was like for you?
Yeah, now that I kind of connect with energy, I see things much more objectively. It's like pathways and are we going against the grain or with the grain? And I do know now that I was kind of going against the grain of the energy a little bit. That was the path I had to do at the time. But there were lessons that I needed to learn. And so, joining during Don't Ask, Don't Tell back in the year 2000, and then subsequently being removed from the Navy for being gay was 2 years later was very traumatic. It was another kind of, abandonment, kind of situation. So, it was tough and it was a tough lesson, but I wouldn't change it. And now I see it much more objectively as it's just something I had to go through. And as wrong as it was and things were perpetrated against me and all that stuff, um, it really kind of sent me on my journey. And I met that friend that I mentioned earlier. I met him as I was being removed from the Navy there in New Jersey. So that kind of, I just look back now and I'm like, as horrible as that was at the time, being in it, I see all these cool things that happen. It's like knocking the first domino down and all the others follow. So my message to people watching this that are going through hard times, it's for a reason. And I truly believe that.
That's wonderful.
Mhm.
I love the ancestry part. I love that you talk about when you were young. It's such an important part of, a lot of our listeners don't realize that they have gifts. And if they look back to their childhood, sometimes they see that they began back then.
Really important because so much of what we're talking about is trauma. And in those moments, it's so hurtful and overwhelming. But to recognize that there is a larger dance at play for your evolution. So you now are in 2020. If we can get you up to 2020, you're helping your friend. You start to experience what? What did you start to experience?
Yeah, the first thing that happened for me is, I mean, up to that point, I'd heard of like tarot. My auntie, who's in spirit as well since 2014, she was a tarot reader, and so I was familiar with the world in general. But he introduced me to like oracle cards and crystals and all these different things that are great kind of add-ons to connecting with spirit. And so I figured if I'm going to help him and blog for him and kind of get into this, I need to know what I'm doing or kind of at least, live in this world to a degree. The first thing for me when I kind of started meditating and getting really mindful with myself was the healing of the trauma. So that's kind of where it all started was just kind of connecting with myself and seeing some of the, I guess we'll say the guards that I put up from stuff that had happened 20, 30 years ago and working with that through spirit and my own mindfulness. And I literally can remember a point when I was meditating on my floor in this very room. And I did the whole like candles and all that thing. And I revisited a very traumatic situation with a person, one of the perpetrators. I revisited it in a spiritual way. And I no longer saw him as a perpetrator. I saw him as just another beautiful spirit, just like me, that was kind of playing a part. And unfortunately, in that, I was the victim, and he was the perpetrator. But everything let go, and I literally felt myself levitating off the floor. It felt like just releasing everything. And from that moment on, I was able to interact with energy in such a different way. So that was the switch for me is just letting go. And that's how I did it. I'm not saying that's going to work for everybody, but that's what did it for me was just kind of getting in that spiritual moment and seeing my trauma and things that had happened from a spiritual level and less of like a human brain level.
Yeah, yeah. When you sat down that day with the intention of meditation, was there intention to revisit the trauma or was it just something that unfolded?
Yeah, I was kind of led to it through some other mindful practices. So I knew that that was, and I thought I had really dealt with it, you know, through my own therapy, talking to people, just, living life and compartmentalizing. But there were still some things that weren't quite dealt with on that deeper kind of energetic level. So I knew I had to go there. And it was difficult, but really cathartic as well.
So did that happen? So that meditation and that experience was before you realized that your gift was coming awake, or was or
Yeah, it's what really kind of opened it up.
Right.
And then it was kind of getting more in line of, I was reading oracle cards and I started reading for people and in more of a psychic level, connecting with people individually. And then I started getting messages that I was like, wait, this isn't coming from the person's energy. This is coming from almost like a third party's whispering in my ear. And that's when I kind of realized that I was also talking to their loved ones in spirit. So it was just like it all kind of had its own stages. And the important thing for me was that I let spirit know, or whatever I was dealing with. I said, bring it all. I'm open. I'm the tool. Use me. Let's do it.
You don't always hear that. And I talk with so many people who have these experiences, and there's a lot of resistance and fear. But I'm hearing that wasn't your experience.
No, I'm
You
not
were
scared.
like, I'm
I
not
never
scared.
operate out of fear anyway. That's one of my little mottos that I like to say is like, I never operate out of fear.
the opening too comes as you really looked at that trauma, as you allowed that to come in, and trauma is often um, a catalyst to us opening to our spirit gifts.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talk about, I'd love some definition or description or paint a picture, however I say it. There's energy, there's spirit, there's guides, and then there's those that crossed over. The clairs, right? The different ways that people experience this higher consciousness and connection. What is the difference between those? And
Mhm.
then how do they come in for you? Do you see them? Do you feel them? Do you hear them? So start with the definition, if you would, please.
All right. Definition. So another thing is I always start with the base level is I don't know. Okay. That I find so much power. This is another thing where the ego just, I got to say, ego, we're good. Check it at the door. Right. So I find so much power and I don't know. And that's the truth. I didn't create heaven and earth. I don't know. But how I feel it, my perspective of it is, and I usually use the metaphor of like, everything's like a gumbo, right? So with the gumbo, you got the chicken and the sausage and the rice and the spices. Um, but at the end of the day, when it's all together, it's all gumbo and it's all delicious. So it's like a one source, one force where same but different, right? So I don't know, I'm using a lot of cliches, but that's just how it is for me. So I try not to get too caught up in this is coming from a guide, this is coming from this guide, this is coming from X, Y, and Z. It's just all energy and I welcome it all. No, there are some times where I might be with a client and I'm like, this message is coming in for you, but I know this is grandma, or I know this is such and such because they make that known to me. But for the most part, it's kind of all the same. It's all energy. It's all universal spiritual energy.
Yeah.
And I asked myself the question, does it matter if it's an angel, a guide, Metatron or Jesus, or does it matter? To me, it does not.
And is it something you turn on or off, or is it always with you? How does it show up in your life as you wake up in the morning, you go to bed at night?
Yeah. Um, it's with all of us. Spirit is omnipresent, always present. It's just about our receptors, right? So, yeah, I never understood when I would hear mediums say, to spirit, come closer. Because to me, it's part of me. And there's no distance. Spirit and energy I'm part of it as well. Right. So, it's just about me being the one that opens up and sets those intentions.
Mm.
And fortunately for me, I'm not the medium that's going to tell you that I have a problem going to the store because I'm bombarded with energy because my default is off.
That's
Mhm.
what I'm asking.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking. Okay.
And that probably has to do with some of the trauma that I dealt with as a child. So it's like off is my starting point, and then I probably have to work harder than most mediums and empaths to turn it on. So before every reading, before every live I do, I spend a little bit of time kind of getting in that space.
Speaking of lives, I have to say, we're uncovering an interesting story here. Lots of lessons. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. It really helps the channel and gets these messages out. So, what do you do? You go into meditation? How do you open it up? And the reason I'm asking is because you said, and everyone says, everyone has access to this. Everyone, if
Mhm.
placed a piano in front of them, they can learn to play. Some people more easily than others, but it's not something that makes anyone special. It's opening up a channel or flipping a phone. How do you suggest people begin, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. When I started, I felt like I had before I would have a reading, and it's all scheduled, right? I would tell my husband, "Hey, we need to be home, an hour before. I need to like go into a deep meditation. I need to, light all the candles and everything has to be, perfect." And now it's like I just give myself a few minutes before a reading just to kind of drop off and shut down my stuff. And then it's really just pointing my heart at your heart or whoever I'm reading for. And it's just basically I just have to realize that I love this person as much as I love myself because we're connected in that way. And that's all I need to do is just open up my heart and say, our hearts are connected. Let's do this. And so I don't need to go into a deep meditation. My intentions are always set in the right way, in the right place. So unless that changes, unless I kind of get into some heavy stuff on my end, I don't need to really do a lot of you know, readjustments here.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stopher. I find the work that I do, it is that energy that when you sit down with somebody, that exchange, it just kind of comes in naturally, and you just
Yeah.
feel it, and it begins to happen without. It almost begins just as a plain conversation, and then it seems to open up from there.
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. It's just, hey, we can share just that loving energy, whether I know you personally or not, and just understand your your spirit just like I am. We are one spirit, right? I don't believe in like we all have our own spirit. We are all kind of a piece of the ocean, right? We're just in different cups. Somebody's dipped their cup in, and we're just a different cup of water. But eventually, we all get poured back into the ocean.
Well, so did your clients that come to see you, do they, are they coming and asking you specific questions, or are they just coming and saying, share with me? Are they looking for you to do cards, or how's that work with you?
Yeah, perfect question because it's different. Each one's unique. I don't read cards. I haven't. I've got in this closet behind me stacks and stacks of cards. I haven't touched them in a long time. I don't use them to read anymore. Like I said, I just kind of connect with the person's heart and kind of go from there. But if they don't direct me during a reading, then I just kind of have a bit of a template where I'm going to dive into health and wellness. I'm going to dive into relationships, home life, career and finance, spirituality, and any messages that might come in from loved ones. Sometimes people they want to direct me though. Hey, my career, I need to know what's going on, and then I don't need too much context. I just kind of go from there.
Oh, I love that. So you don't need a lot of context and you go from there. Back to this idea of clairs. Are you hearing words or is it like a knowing? Are you seeing things? Is it a gumbo of all the above?
Yeah, it's a bit of a gumbo, and the best way I can describe it is, like I told you, when I go into a reading or a live or whatever I'm doing, I have to kind of check down my stuff, right? So I'm just kind of clicking off to this and that, and then so of course I'm running in the background. If we're using an analogy of like a computer system, there is Stopher running in the background, but now it's kind of opening up the applications of the person I'm reading, and then it's really just kind of letting that channel through me, and it's kind of hearing things that, they're in my voice, but they're not things that I would hear or think, for myself. Sometimes it's like I feel like I want to do something. I'm like, why do I feel like I want to fish? I feel like I want to go in the ocean and fish. And would you understand? Grandpa would have been a avid fisherman, And this is how they talk to me. Grandpa's telling me that he was here and he loved to fish. So that I literally will crave things or want to do things that I normally wouldn't do. I don't like fishing, so I know that's not my stuff.
Does it ever get confusing to discern if it's your stuff or someone else's when it is like, or are you just in that zone that is,
Yeah, not too much. I mean, sometimes. I mean, sometimes I'll feel like I want to do something and the person will understand it. So maybe they're just not understanding. Maybe it is my stuff. I don't know. I kind of just I don't spend too much time worrying about that. If I just kind of let it be open and let that flow, it all works out pretty well. But it's hearing, it's see. I'm not too visual with the clairvoyance. Sometimes I'll get little snippets, but for the most part, it's hearing, knowing, and just kind of my body wanting and mind wanting to do things that I'm not normally accustomed to do or think.
so interesting? I want to pivot the conversation a little bit because I feel like, well, let me say this first. So before the elections, I was really like, it's going to be Harris. I just know it's going to be
Hmm.
Harris. And there are some trusted, for me, trusted psychic mediums. And I don't want to get this, this is not about politics.
Right.
Although I think through this, it'll be clear that it was really hard for me when Trump won. But I will say, I just had that energy. And then I went to your channel and you said, no, looks like the energy is telling me it's not going to be Harris. And I had one other medium that I really trust who said the same. And I, because I didn't want to face that, went, no, 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 they must be wrong. They must be wrong. And so the reason I share that is that it contributes. And I know with, I shouldn't say I know, my understanding is that based whether it's the Akashic records or free will or all different threads that we can walk through, it's can be hard to predict the future because there are many different futures that could unfold. But I share all this to say it feels like we are on the precipice of a lot of change and a reset and an awakening. And much of it may be painful, but what are you hearing or experiencing about this particular time in the evolution of humanity that may be helpful for people to hear?
Yeah. And just to be clear, when I make predictions, I never claim to see the future, and I don't believe the future is written. That's just my own belief based on what I feel and experience. I'm just kind of telling you if I make a prediction like that, this is going to happen in an election. I'm just kind of telling you what freeway we're on and kind of where we're headed.
Mm.
And so I bake in the free will thing and hey, there are exits, there is potential for more traffic, so things can change, but this is kind of where we're pointed. And I do the same thing when I make personal predictions for people. Personal predictions are actually much, much easier because there's less X factors than, a prediction like an election. But that's kind of how that works. And then as far as us heading for a reset, I feel like we're resetting constantly. So I guess for me, it's just, what can we do? What's in our control is local energy, right? And where we point our heart and the things we do in our day to day. So it's always going to be that for me is, even today I've had a few moments, where I could have done better, communicating with somebody or having a moment with somebody. So it's just always resetting and taking that personal energy and taking, control of that.
I have a question. Do you feel spirit guiding you in your everyday life? Do you feel that in your, making decisions, that you get a yes or a no in, yeah, this is a good idea, or do you feel that not only you have the gift to help others, but that it's actually guiding you as well?
100%. Everything is spirit. Everything. I'll tell a quick story. Is my father passed away a long time ago, like 20 some odd years ago now. But and I never felt super connected to him. And then when I kind of started having this journey for myself, I really opened up to just what you're saying, Bernadette, is everything's a sign from spirit. Everything is kind of giving me a push in a certain direction, whether I go that direction or not. And so I remember about my dad. He lived in Kentucky, and I'm originally from Indiana, but he liked this snack called a moon pie, which I think are absolutely disgusting. I think they're gross. It's like marshmallows. But I'm now in California, in Los Angeles. We don't really have that same kind of food and snacks here. But if I see like one of those in a store or a big display, um, I will literally in the store be like, "Hey, Dad, love you." It's a sign. It's him sending me a hug. I know he didn't put that display there, but I'm connecting it, right? I was put it there in that moment. I saw it. I thought of Dad. So it's a choice for all of us if we want to make those connections, or if we just want to say, "Oh, those stupid snack cakes I hate." Mhm. But for me, that's Dad, right? So everything. I have a specific number, and I blog about that on my website that kind of came to me when I was a teenager. And it's not like 222. It's a different kind of number. I see this in so many different ways throughout every single day. And so I know that spirit just giving me a hug, giving me a nudge. Sometimes it's a yes, sometimes it's a no. So that's a lot of words just to say yes. Absolutely.
Th- that was a great example. And we often, numbers are a great way for people who are trying to connect with spirit. They're trying to learn the language. Is really spirit's trying to
Mhm.
get you to learn their language, and numbers can be a great way for people to get started and really to pay attention to them.
100%.
And what I'm getting to is when you see the moon pies, back to the idea of so much of this communication is through the language of love and starts like in the heart. Whether it's a butterfly or a moon pie or, a dime, if when you see that, it's like you're opening up that channel.
Mhm.
Let me ask you this. So many of us want to connect with those who have passed on. If does it make sense? Is it worth our while? Just weigh in. Like to say, Mom, on the other side, will you send me a sign and ask for that sign to be a Lego or a rose or, like what might be a good way to ask for signs other than just being available to them? And is that sort of fair game?
I don't love it.
Tell
So,
me more. Tell me more because I've heard others say the opposite, but I love hearing different perspectives.
yeah. I mean, I think that's just because my default is always that spirit's here, and there is a certain amount of faith, right? I'm not a religious person, but I do really think that faith is a cool thing. So if you just kind of start with that of, hey, I know Dad is here, I know Mom is here, whoever, and then it's kind of like I said, it's a decision. So I guess I just kind of assign the moon pies to Dad because that's you know, I'm the one living here, right? I'm the one living in the physical, so I just kind of assign those, and when I need to see it, I see it, right? And then it's up, like I say, it for me, it's a decision. I can't speak for anybody else, but it really is a decision. And I will say this: once I made that decision to put everything as a sign from spirit, my life got a lot better, and made a lot more sense. And I stopped kind of going up or against the grain, as I said earlier, and now I'm just kind of flowing with it, and everything's a sign, and I'm happier. So,
Can you give more examples? Because I know, myself included, we all want that, and yet we seem to get in our own way. What are
mhm.
some practical ways that we can start being open and not being so resistant that we will begin to feel that sense of faith?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Like I said before, every to see everything as a sign. The other day, I walked out the house, and I saw a coin on the ground in my driveway, and then probably 10 steps later, I saw a feather, and then I saw a butterfly and a dragonfly. So all very spiritual symbols. So I said, hey, some things are working right now. Some things are working around me. Do I understand them? No. Do I know what that means? No. But I do know that there's a little more energy here than there normally is. So I just grab it, and then from there, I just understand everything's a yes for the rest of the day, right? Um,
That's interesting.
so there's that. It's I'm just gonna keep going back and saying the same thing, which it's all a decision. And I do think you have to be in a certain place, with yourself to make those decisions, because sometimes it's hard. It's hard to have faith if you're kind of in a crummy place, or if crummy things are happening to you. So I get it. So there is a bit of that, like, kind of walking off the ledge and taking that risk or that leap of faith. But it's been worth it for me, and it wasn't easy for me because I come from a place of such trauma and abandonment and all that fun stuff. But I'm trying to think of some other ways.
Well,
Also, with people being brought into your life is very interesting to me as well, because I'm going back to my friend where I spilled a drink on him in a bar, 20 some odd years ago, when I was going through a very bad place in my life, and that could have went a lot of different ways, but we actually became friends, and then from there, everything was just so serendipitous, and now I know, 18 years later, what happened. It was like, wow, the universe is so, like, perfect that it thought to bring us together. It saw that opportunity, and, the drink got spilled, and all these things happened, and just so that 18 years later, we could both kind of set out on our path to help people and heal people, right?
I love that you talk about faith, about believing, because people get signs. As you said, spirit is around us all the time.
Mhm.
And they are really just trying to have us understand that they are this close. And so some people get caught up in the sign is not exactly what I said, if they're looking for a sign. And so the idea of just relaxing and allowing the faith that they are here so that when something does present itself, that it's something that, they're here, they're right near me. So I love,
Yeah,
love you that you're sharing it that way.
thank you.
Up for me as I listen is I think we all want to pick up the book of our life and go to the last page and read what it all mean. What is this all for? What happened? I know I feel that way. But also in listening to you, what's coming up for me is there's signs, and sometimes for you, there's a lot of energy here, and that indicates a yes or encouragement. Mm. But for me, sometimes it's difficult to discern the signs. Is the sign leading to a yes, or is that a sign moving me in a different way? But back to the idea of trust and faith, it's just saying it's okay not to know, but to allow myself to feel supported and helped.
So, yeah, yes. So the answer is yes. There's and people ask me a lot, am I on my right path, or am I on the right path? And I don't believe there is a wrong path. Sometimes I'll make the analogy again of being on the freeway. Sometimes, like me in the Navy, I got off maybe on an exit that wasn't the easiest way to go, and I was on a bit of a dirt road, right? That had some potholes in it. Eventually, spirit's going, and you're going to learn your lessons. You're going to have to maybe fix a tire or two if we're staying with that analogy. But eventually, you're going to get back on that freeway. So there is no path that takes you in the wrong direction. You just might be on a side street. It's got a little bit more, you know, work to do on the infrastructure, so to speak. But there is no wrong path. We're all headed in a direction. It's just, do we want to be on the freeway, or do we want to be on the side street or the dirt road or whatever you have it?
Mhm.
And like you said, is this a sign to do X, Y, or Z? So I always think, if things are hard, things shouldn't be hard. That's spirit's way of saying maybe not right now. Okay, honey.
That's really, really interesting.
If
Okay.
things are easy, um, like this apartment I have, it was a struggle finding an apartment a few years ago, and then, not to go into a long story, but this one, just talk about serendipity. It was crazy how we just walked in. it happened. We had stopped looking for months, and this is 4 blocks from my other job, and it just all lined up. And then a year later, after we had been here, we're here 4 years now, and we love it, and it's still home. I noticed in the back, there's a parking lot in the back, and you know how when somebody puts new pavement in, new cement, people will write in the cement. Well, all three of my initials are written in the cement, because my given name is Christopher Lee Cavins. So CLC is in the cement. So that's just Spirit's way of also saying, we did make this happen for you. This is, years and years ago, we knew you would be here, right? Um, so yeah, so even after the things happen, you'll get confirmation as well. So everything's a sign, everything.
Everything.
And it was easy. That's how I know that we were supposed to be here, because there were so many other places that were fine, but they just didn't line up. The way this one lined up, there was no doubt. And then I was shown a year later that CLC, right?
Well, and I also think when you start listening, when you start understanding that spirit is around and that there is nothing special that you really have to do to bring them in, that they're here, right? And you begin to allow those signs to really be signs, because so many people fight them and say, "Oh, that's not a sign. That's not a sign." And that the communication that they are really around to help you in some of these big things. I mean, I remember once on this one day going and on the way to the grocery store on the way home, I saw like 6 signs, and it was all number related. But it was crazy. By the time I got home, I was shaking because I'm like, something big's going on. Something is going on. And I got there and there was a letter waiting for me. And I opened the letter and it was an important letter. And I knew exactly what I was supposed to do when I opened that letter because of all that, because of all those signs. So it is sometimes the signs are little, but if they're really trying to get your attention, if you're used to listening to the signs, you'll see the signs when they're big too, and that it's a really, you know, important.
100%.
Yeah.
And the word surrender is coming up because I think it's like we've got this grit mentality. Well, if I work hard enough, I can make this happen. I can have the agency for it to happen versus going, if I'm not in flow and I'm not connected to an energy that is helping to more naturally generate something, maybe that in itself is a sign to slow down.
Yeah, I agree. And some of us can work really hard and overcome those difficulties and still make things happen. And I think that's fine. But and I've been there. I've been that person that wants to go the hard route. Now I'm just like, the world's telling me that there is an easier way to do this or easier way to go. So let's do that. I don't have unlimited energy. So I'm all for the flow. I say that all the time, like, let's be in the flow. Or are you swimming upstream, or are you with the flow? That's when things get easy and a little bit more fun as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
love
trust, faith, watching for the signs,
Mhm.
right? Living more in the energy of love versus fear.
Hmm.
Anything else? And again, I'm going back, and if I'm pushing too hard, you can go slow your roll there, lady. But again, because I think there's so much up in the world right now, whether it's wars or there's just a lot of upheaval, surrender, flow, signs, love, anything else in the collective that you are receiving from energy source guides that feels important for humanity to embrace or have an awareness.
Yeah, we have to. It all comes kind of back also to the love thy neighbor. If we're going into that place, and I know we just came out. We're kind of still in the election kind of energy, and that's kind of sticky. If I'm describing the energy, it's sticky, and we kind of, those fences get a little taller during this time. I actually work with somebody who very much is on a different political spectrum. I'm not super political myself, but I have my ideas about things, and he's very different than I am. And he's very passionate about where he's at. And so I don't love it when that fence is there, but if we're able to kind of connect, talk about other things, his grandkids and sports and that type of thing, I love the guy to death. It's so if we can just kind of remove, whether it's politics or something else, just kind of remove those fences and find the things. I know this is just kind of general stuff. I mean, I don't think you have to be super connected to know this stuff, but and just talk about if something bothers us about a person, there are probably 20 other things that we can find about them or a group of people that we connect on and that we love and we want to talk about and connect with. So it starts there. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can just be the next person that the world brings to you. How are you going to interact with them? How are you going to make their day better?
Mm.
Because we're all one. I believe we're all one, and we're all going back to the same place. When this body is done, we're all going back to the same place.
Kindness and connection, and looking for commonality versus looking for
Yeah, there's plenty of
differences.
other things to talk about. We don't have to talk about those tough things, those things that divide us.
And I think non-judgment, because I think that we all come into our experiences when we talk about, ancestors or things like that. We all come into our experience with a whole lot of stuff that we were taught or shared with us, and so, the fact that we have differences, as long as we, just don't judge as much, and it makes it. I think is what makes it easier for us to engage with each other in a really positive. I love this idea of flow. I love that you're using that as a way of um, just explaining how spirit can help you guide you through your life, and so it's wonderful.
Can I play devil's advocate
Please,
for
I welcome that.
okay, thank you. Because that mindset of look for commonality, be kind, I can embrace that all day long. And then I know there are people who are part of the marginalized community, whether it's LGBTQ or a woman who feels like their reproductive rights are in jeopardy. And you see it on social media where someone's like, if you have voted for this person, you voted against my rights to be safe. And so I understand we can connect, but when it jeopardizes, when what you are doing jeopardizes my safety, am I not to say something? I raise this to say I have those places in me, and I imagine a lot of people, when these feelings of fear arise, how do you hold the human part of us that says, I'm afraid of people being violated, maybe
Mhm.
myself, versus a spiritual aspiration to lead with love?
Yeah. Once again, starting from a place of I don't know. I don't. That is tough. But for me, just going into a logical place, once again, for me, I think of what does it change to have these. Yes, it's one thing to be passionate, and I would never ask somebody to set aside their passion or their beliefs. But at the same time, if I'm talking to that person and they didn't vote a certain way, or I think maybe they voted against my, what's good for me, what protects me as a LGBTQ person, I they have their own life too. They have their own kind of thing too. So I just choose not to, and I don't think it change for me. It doesn't change anything to kind of tell them my side of the story, unless they ask. Of course, I'm going to tell them. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I figure more can get done by finding that commonality and becoming, you know, developing another kind of foundation with that instead of starting at the place of you're here, I'm there. I don't like what you did
Adversarial.
or where you're at with it. We start with, hey, we like the same football team. Hey, we're buddies, or and then we can probably have those hard conversations later.
Yeah.
Because why start with that? We're starting
As
opposed.
adversaries, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that I don't think anything gets done there. And I think when we do kind of start with a better foundation and then have those conversations later, we probably realize that we're not too far apart
Right.
on what we actually want. It's just maybe we choose to skin that cat a little different. But sorry, that's a really crude thing to say. But
Speaking of animals, my dog is barking at the door.
Well, the other thing too is the idea of us raising the consciousness, and I think we can do it. Um, a little bit at a time. And as you said, if we find that commonality and bring that energy up, there's so many people need healing, and just being able to um, be in a place where they can feel comfortable. And I think what you're saying is, if we try in those situations to have some commonality, and it doesn't mean that we don't, when we disagree with somebody, it doesn't mean we ever have to agree with them.
Right.
Even when we, so it's just, yeah, raising the consciousness.
I believe we're here for a reason, that our souls chose this unique time in history for whatever experiences or lessons. And maybe some people are going to be social justice warriors, some people are going to be the ones who can sit with opposing viewpoints and find commonality. I mean, it's the whole experience, but for me, it's like, if the result is that it generates greater connection and love, that should be the guiding principle. And it may have different expressions because we all have different sort of soul blueprints.
Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna use another analogy. It's like if this were a game or a simulation, I believe that the goal of this simulation is for us to eventually figure out that pathway to kind of drop as much of the ego and the human stuff and reconnect our souls, because we're all one. So the more we have those divisions, the less we're winning the game. But the more we can tear them down piece by piece by piece by piece, and that's kind of what we're doing through, an evolution of life. Eventually, we're going to get there. We might be a little bit behind schedule right now, but I believe eventually that's kind of the goal of this simulation, so to speak, is to get to that place where we all just kind of connect and drop the human stuff, the heavy, yucky stuff, and kind of automatically just kind of connect on that more,
Right.
you know, innate,
Centered place.
spiritual, universal level.
Well, and
Yeah.
recognizing that we're spiritual beings, even in these
Yeah.
earthly bodies, and that when we get all caught up in the stuff, that sometimes there can be a release if we just allow ourselves to kind of pull out a little bit and realize that we are all, spiritual beings trying to navigate through this very challenging experience.
And the idea of contrast, that if we are looking for signs, maybe even a sign is to say, I'm having a reaction that some contrast of darkness is here perhaps to illuminate the light. At least that's what I tell myself, that collectively, if we can rise to the occasion of coming from a heartfelt place, that it actually does illuminate light and love. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and I know all of our beliefs are the exact polar opposite. But part of it, I was just, I'm like, he means well,
Mhm.
and I'm too tired. And I just want to have peace and harmony and a good conversation. Like, to your point, Stopher, it will do no good. I'm not going to convince him. Me getting aggravated, it will only create more of what I'm trying to resolve. Yeah. So thank you for allowing that diversion and those questions, because for me, those questions really do come up, being like, how do you live a spiritual life as you navigate a lot of emotional, political, situational complexity, and for a lot of people, pain? And again, we came here, and so many data points of having these emotional experiences are not without profound lesson if we choose to see it that way. But what I'm getting from you is all this flow, like open heartedness, flow. You are divinely supported.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just I guess one last thing that I'm kind of thinking of here is when we talk about the kind of the sticky stuff. There's always more context that we don't know, so it's kind of, I guess, going back to walking in someone else's shoes, right? Because we might learn something or where they stand on something, but there's so much more context. So we just need to give it a little, let things marinate a little bit, and don't just kind of put your, I talk about the energetic swords and shields, right? We always want to have that ready to go. But if we just kind of give it a beat and, kind of learn where people are coming from, get that context, the energy always has a little bit of additional context. Even when I'm in going back to like readings, when I'm in readings and we're talking about clairs, I might get some information that I hear, but before I deliver it to a person, I'm always going to want one other clair to get involved. So I'm going to see how that makes me feel as well. Because I'm always looking for more information. So I might hear something that isn't going to make sense, but if I hear it and then also give the feeling of it, so that additional piece of context, then it can actually land a little bit better for my sitter or for the person that needs to hear it.
Are there collective messages that thematically seem to recur when loved ones from the other side are coming through?
Yeah, almost every time. And I always let them, I know this is coming, but I always let them tell me or for me to kind of get this information uniquely with every spirit. But they always want us to know that they're okay. I've never had a spirit come through and say, this sucks or I'm not happy. They want us, there's also an energy that I get with every single, I can't remember one time where there wasn't permission energy coming through. So they give us permission to do whatever, with their stuff or to move on to other relationships. I hate to say they don't care, but when you're in energy, you don't care. They just want us to be happy. They don't care what we do with their stuff or their house. As long as it makes us happy, they want that. So there's always permission and a message that they're doing okay.
And forgiveness, maybe?
There's a lot of forgiveness that comes up a lot because a lot of times the person in front of me is feeling some guilt about something. So once again, that kind of comes with the permission of,
Yeah.
hey, this grandma's coming through with permission for you to release that. She doesn't care. She doesn't
Like
care
there's
that you
some
sold her house or that whatever, or that you weren't there at her funeral or whatever the case is. Um, they don't really care.
Well, I think that's really liberating for people because I hear so many times people say, gosh, the last time we talked, I didn't tell her I loved her, or we got in an argument, or I didn't return a text. And the guilt that we feel saddled with, I hope that is really releases the heaviness of that. And that
Mhm.
person on the other side holds only goodwill for our happiness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? I just you said it. You said it well. I mean that's 100% right.
Okay. We're getting close to time. So I'd like to ask you what I always ask our guests, but I also want to leave room for Bernadette. Any other thoughts or questions, Bernadette, before I?
No, I think just the I always go back to the healing. I think what you're doing is wonderful, and I just love the way that you are guiding your readers, and so yeah, and just looking forward to an opportunity to maybe see you and and witness you working, and that would
Yeah. Well, we're both here in LA, right? So
we both here and
maybe we'll get an in-person meeting soon.
yeah,
I welcome that for sure.
wow, I do too.
So you have, again, for me, when I first listened to you, have this very understated, calm quality. Even your messages are like, just kind of lighten up and lead with love, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You get to the end of your life, as we all will. What do you want your legacy to have been?
Wow, you hit me with a hard one. That's heavy.
Bam.
Um, you know, I got called. I had to look up this word when I was in my probably late 20s. I was working in a restaurant. Kim Brown, if you're watching Kim Brown, she uh, she called me irreverent. I was like, "What's that mean?" That's probably pretty cool, right? And so I am a bit irreverent. So I don't take too many things really seriously, even though certain things, you know, society tells us they should be taken seriously. So, I guess in a way, for legacy, that I was able to laugh, and I just want to kind of put that out into, I laugh at myself probably more than anyone else does. So it doesn't bother me if people make fun of me. I'm like, I probably said it all about myself already. So yeah, just, like you said, let's not take things too seriously. And I hope that I brought a little bit of that kind of playfulness to this crazy world, right? That irreverence, that silliness. That's kind of, I guess that's my thing.
Beautiful answer. How do people reach you? They want to have a reading. Where do they find you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, stophercavins.com, and my schedule is on there. You can book straight through the website, pick your day. We can do it by phone, or we can do it just like this on like a Zoom call. Sometimes I do FaceTime if people, if that is easier for them. I also offer email readings. So if somebody doesn't want to sit for a reading, they can just like submit 4 questions, and then I will record something and send it to them through their email. So there's a lot of different ways that I can help. And then also on my YouTube channel, I do go live, or try to go live every Monday evening, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And I'll usually be on for half an hour to an hour, just kind of answering questions.
And
And
people can put in those questions.
people can put in the questions, or they can email to the Stopher Show at stophercavins.com and submit questions. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of go into a session before I go live, and then I'll just read the question and the answer that comes out on the live.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's every Monday on YouTube, 6 p.m.
What a treat to have you. Really appreciate you sharing your time and your wisdom with us.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
it was a pleasure.
Stopher.
Thanks for asking me to come on. How do we date?
Mine too. Mine too.
How I Made It Through is produced and distributed by EIQ Media, LLC. Elevate your emotional IQ with podcasts and content focused on overcoming adversity, leadership, mental health, entrepreneurship, spiritually transformative experiences, and more.